And can you tell us a bit about these pictures and also perhaps the technical difficulties of shooting what seems to be nightclub scenes?
Right. Well, because I don't really like to use flash, because I find it dulls all the colour in the images, I'm using a fast transparency film. And the reason I'm using transparency as opposed to colour negative film is I get the colour saturation, which is really important for me for these images. It's quite hit and miss sometimes, especially with transparency film, but you do have a degree of control, and if you work carefully with light metering, and you can get a result. They're not sort of relying on every detail being there. They're much more about creating a feeling and using colour as a tool to seduce the viewer. Two of these are taken at the Hero Party, and the top one's taken at a performance for 150 Ways of Loving Live, which is an exhibition that's just finished in Auckland. 150 Ways of Loving was a show curated by myself and Kirsty Cameron and Paul Booth, and it was about censorship and pornography and the current changes in censorship law in New Zealand in terms of publication and videos and artwork, and it was about sexual diversity, transgressive imagery. You wouldn't see these in the New Zealand Herald. Hopefully one day you might, but that's just a decision that I made as a press photographer. I had two choices. I could either buy into the whole structure of the newspaper and work within it to create change, which is incredibly difficult road to take, I think, or I could opt out of it and create the work I wanted to create and try and put that into the public view in other ways, and that's the decision, that's the way I decided to go. So I thought I'd be happier working in that way. Even if the work was seen by less people, I'd still rather the work was, I had the freedom to actually make the work that was different. I think initially how I got into it was first when I started photographing devotion about 3 years ago. I was working for the newspaper at that time, and I was interested in offering alternative representations that reinforced people's lifestyles as positive, people in this community's lifestyles as positive rather than negative or stereotyped, as we were constantly seeing and still do see in the mainstream media in New Zealand. And the other reason is because I really enjoyed these events, and I really enjoyed the way that boundaries about gender and sexuality were broken down at these events, and that you could just be who you wanted to be. And I found the experience of these events very positive.
Your comments on the nature of traditional documentary photographs in the newspaper, how does that contrast with, say, the work you did in the Street Life project of young adults down in Wellington? Well,
that was also an attempt to create a different perspective to what was offered in the mainstream media, and to sort of highlight the sensationalism of the way that group was represented in the media.
What about the issue of getting people's permission to take photographs and dealing with that?
Well, in that instance, I had a very close relationship with the group, so I was all the time taking the photographs back to show them and to talk about how they felt about them, and I just I didn't use photographs that they didn't like. I tend to work quite a lot with the vibes I get from people, like these two people, they didn't have a problem with the camera at all. So I've always been interested in giving alternative representations, offering up alternative representations to the public.